Hi everyone, and I hope you're all doing great. So welcome to my next video tutorial where I'll be teaching you how to assign an SSL certificate to your Elastic Load Balancer. So let's get started. Now there are a few prerequisites for this video tutorial that should be relatively straightforward. So first of all, you want to head over to Route 53. So if you're not sure of how to get there, just type in Route 53 and click on the following. And then we also have something called Certificate Manager. So here you can type ACM. So that's like a short way of mentioning it, of stating it, which leads to Certificate Manager. So it stands, of course, for Amazon Certificate Manager. So what you need to do beforehand, you need to register a domain name, and then after that you need to go ahead and provision an SSL certificate for that domain name. Now I do have videos on how to do this, and I'll put it in the description below. So basically the final result that you want to see is if you head over to Route 53, and once you've registered your domain name, what you should see is the following, and that is at least under your domain registration, which is just taking some time to load. Okay, just wait for it. You should have at least one domain, and of course you'll have a hosted zone for that domain. So make sure you at least have a domain name registered. And like I said, I'll add a video in the link with a link to how to do this in the description. Then you need to make sure that you provision an SSL certificate, or TLS certificate as it's known nowadays, to that domain name that you registered. So you'll need to provision that as well. So again, I do have a video on how to do this, and I'll add it to the description below. Okay, so those are the prerequisites before you move forward with this video tutorial. So make sure you do that, and then we'll move on to the next steps. Right, so let's move on to the next steps. So I'm going to open two tabs here, okay, and I'll explain why that is. Because the first thing I want to do is I want to create a normal EC2 instance, and I want to actually go to EC2 here. So we're first of all going to create an EC2 instance, and then what we'll do later in another tab, we will provision a load balancer. So what I'm going to do here on this tab, I'm going to go to load balancers. Okay, let's open that. Okay, there we go. And on this tab here, I'm going to create an EC2 instance. Now, as a preference for me, I don't like to use the new EC2 experience when I launch the load balancer setup wizard. Okay, for me, it's a bit laggy and a bit slow. The choice is yours. However, for creating EC2 instances, I like to use the new EC2 experience in this case. So what I'm going to do is just switch this over for new EC2 experience just for this, and old for that. Choice is yours on what to do. So let's go to instances here running, and I want to launch an instance. Okay, I'm going to set my server. So here I'm going to say server 1. Okay, very simple. Okay, under the AMI, so the base OS image, I'm going to keep it as default Amazon Linux. Free tier eligible, just double check that. Scroll down. Then I'm going to use the T2 micro instance type since this is free tier eligible. So go ahead and select that if you're able. Under key pair name, we're not really going to work on SSH today. So what you can do, if you don't have one, you can create a new key pair. All you would need to do is enter a key pair name and create the key pair. Okay, but if you already have one, just select one randomly. We're not going to focus on this. It's just something that's required on AWS's side. Under network settings, okay, we can go ahead and create a new security group. Okay, and we're going to just go ahead and just say allow HTTP traffic from the internet. We're going to just keep it very basic. It doesn't really matter what we do here so much. So we're going to make use of our load balancer. So that's the most important part here. So we can just say allow HTTP traffic from the internet, and we can create a security group. Okay, so this isn't as essential. We can scroll down, and you want to click on this advanced details block here, and scroll all the way to the bottom until you see user data. And here we're going to add some data, so some code. So we see some basic HTML being rendered when we access our website. So I've gone ahead and created sort of a bash file here of some code. I will pin this to the comments, so you can go ahead and copy and paste it as you wish. If I can give you some advice as to how to manipulate this, just simply change what's in the h1 tag. So you can see here, this is basic HTML. So just go ahead and change whatever the text is here to what you want. I'm just saying this is the best website on the planet. You can go ahead and change the text here. Everything else you must leave as is, or this script won't work properly. So I'm just going to copy this, paste it in user data, and scroll down. Just check everything's right. So one instance software image is on the Amazon Linux 2 kernel, T2 micro, new security group, and let's launch this instance. Okay, there we go. All right, so we can go to view instances, and yeah, I actually want to set this to what is actually, let's refresh. Okay, it should actually show me the running ones. That's what I actually want to check. Okay, but needless to say, we have one that is pending, and this is the one that we're waiting for. And this is the one here. So I don't know why it's showing 2. Let's try and refresh this. Because there we go. So we want to find instance by running. Okay, so that's what I needed to do. So you can set that here by running. Okay, so it's running at the moment, so we cannot access it just yet because the status checks need to be completed. So once it shows 2 out of 2 status checks, we'll be able to actually connect to this EC2 instance. So let's just wait for those status checks. So what I think is a good idea is to wait, and once the status checks have been completed, we can go ahead and connect to this EC2 instance just to check if it's running as it should. And what we'll do then is we'll start setting up our load balancer and connect it to our EC2 instance, and then we're going to go on from there. So let's just wait for that. All right, so welcome back. And we can now see that the status checks have passed. So let's refresh. Good, let's check our server. And what I always like to do is just open another address here. Now it's going to open HTTPS. So what I like to do is double click and press the back arrow here and just remove the S and press enter because we're allowing HTTP connections here. And there we go. So this is the best website on the planet. So this tells us that this EC2 instance is running perfectly, and it's also rendering out the user data as it should. Okay, so this is good. So at least when we connect our load balancer, we shouldn't have any issues whatsoever. Great. So we have our instance done, set and ready to go. So remember the name server1. Let's head over to our load balancer and create a load balancer. So it's going to be an application load balancer because we want SSL termination from our SSL certificate from ACM. So we can go ahead and create that. Oh, okay. Strange. Let's go back. Create the load balancer. Create. It's a bit unusual. Oh, I think I know why. So what we need to do is just close this here. I think we can only have one page open, it seems, and let's just refresh. Yeah, that's why. That's a bit odd. And let's just take off that new EC2 experience, well, in my case. Okay, and let's go ahead and create that load balancer. Okay, that's very odd. I don't know why it's redirecting. It's very strange. Create the load balancer and let's create. Okay, so that was strange, guys. So let's go ahead here and just set the load balancer name. So we're going to say demo app LB. We're going to set that to internet facing IPv4. And now under the listeners, we want HTTP port 80. And we also want to add another load balancer protocol for HTTPS on port 443. Okay, now we want to set our availability zones. So the VPC will be the default VPC of AWS, which is fine. And to make sure our load balancer and hence to an extension our application is highly available, we want to go ahead and select all availability zones. I would advise having at least 3. And the reason I say at least 3 is because in some regions you get the opportunity to have up to 6 availability zones. So I would suggest trying to have 3. So in most cases, we will max them out. Okay, great. You can go ahead and add a global load a global accelerator if you'd like. But that's not really necessary because we're just doing some testing here. But it is helpful if you have a real production application. You can make use of this global accelerator and add static anycast IPs. So bear that in mind. This will help reduce latency and improve application performance. Sorry guys, I'm dragging. Let's say next, configure security settings, and automatically it's going to choose a certificate from ACM, certificate manager. And what you can do here, if you have multiple certificates, just refresh and you can browse all those certificates. So I only have one, so I'm going to choose the one that's given to me. Everything else can remain as is. Let's go to security groups. Okay, we don't have one for our load balancer, so we're going to say create a new security group, and here I'm going to name it demo app lb sg. So demo app lb load balancer sg security group, and under the description I'm going to just copy and paste the same. Okay, so we are going to be able to connect to our load balancer from IPv4 and IPv6 addresses here under port 80 and port 443. So we need to set the type for port 80 to HTTP, and port 443 we need to set the type to HTTPS, and it will lock in. As you'll see, it will dim out. Great, that's looking good. So make sure you set the following. Let's go to routing, create a target group. So here I'm just going to say demo app, let's say TG, demo app TG. And we need to set the target type to instance because we created an EC2 instance. Protocol, we're going to set this to HTTP. Now, the reason for this is I want to teach you how to redirect HTTP requests to HTTPS. That's the only reason for doing this. So leave it as is, and that's fine. Let's go to targets. So we have one instance that we want to register here. So scroll down and we have it here, and we want to add to registered on port 80. This is still fine. So add that like so. So make sure you have your registered instance. This is the one that we created earlier. Remember the name that we set, server 1. Now you can go to review and just check everything's fine. Everything's okay for now. And let's say create. So go ahead and create your load balancer. All right, that looks good. Close it, and let's just refresh. Now it's going to take some time for the load balancer to provision. So about 5 minutes is usually the average time. So let's just wait until the state shows active. So it shows provisioning. So let's just wait till it's active, and then we'll move on to the next set of steps. Okay. Hi everyone, and welcome back. So we can now see our load balancer is active in an active state. So we want to go ahead and test this out. So do bear in mind that we are connected via target group to our EC2 instance, so server 1, and this is done by routing with our target group. So effectively what's happening is our load balancer is distributing traffic for us, against our EC2 instance. So we can scroll down here and copy the DNS name here, so the A record. So we can copy that and paste it in. And there we go. So we can now see we connected to our application via our load balancer as follows. Okay, but this doesn't look so nice. And notice it's not secure, so we need to configure a few more things in terms of our HTTP and HTTPS protocols, and also connect that nicely with our Route 53 domain name, with our DNS records to be exact. So let's start and connect this up. So the first thing we need to do is we can now duplicate this, okay? And we're going to go to Route 53 on this tab, not on the same one. So let's wait for that to load, okay? Now here we're going to go to Route 53, okay? So head on over there, all right? And what you can do is head over to your hosted zone. Okay, and you'll have a hosted zone for each domain name that you've created. Now, I only have one domain name, hence I'll only have one hosted zone. Okay, so once you're in here, you can go ahead and say create record and just leave it as follows. What you can do in the meantime actually is you can just say add another record for now. So you have 2 records ready. So let's head over back. And what we want to do is we want to configure our listeners. So remember, we do have 2. We have HTTP on port 80 and HTTPS on port 443. Now let's evaluate HTTPS here. So click on the checkbox and then scroll up here. Scroll up slightly. Oof, I'm saying slightly and I'm skipping ahead. So scroll up to see edit, click on edit. and we want to see it's forwarding traffic to our target group here, TG, 100%, no issues. Okay, that's good. Let's go back. So it's working as it should. But if we go to to HTTP on port 80 here, and we say edit, we can see it is forwarding also to our target group. That's strange. We want to force connections from HTTP, so any HTTP request, we want to force that to be redirected to HTTPS. So to do that, we need to remove this, add a new action, and we want to say redirect to. So here we're just going to put 443, and what's going to happen, it's automatically going to move all HTTP based requests automatically to HTTPS. And this is essential when we want to make use of our domain name along with our SSL certificate. So go ahead and set that up, and you can just click on the check mark down below here. Okay, redirect, good, and update. Okay, it's been updated. Let's go back here, it's this long back arrow. And we're all good now. Everything's working as it should. Okay, so let's head over now to our Route 53. So here we want to create our records. Now, depending on how you set up your SSL certificate, if you only set it up for one variant of your domain name, such as your domain name.com, or if you just set up www.yourdomainname.com, you're going to have to play this by ear as to what you are willing to add here. So in my case, I allowed my SSL certificate here to have two variants. That is edensalt.com, so my domain name.com, and also www.mydomainname.com. So let me elaborate. So I want users to connect to my website with my domain name.com. So in this case, edensalt.com. with the record type of A. Then I'm going to select an alias for record 1. I'm going to route traffic to the application load balancer. And this load balancer is in Ohio, which is in US East 2. So I'm going to choose the region, scroll down, US East 2, Ohio. Then the load balancer is this one here. Okay, so you can verify that by 3432. And we can actually check this in the description, 3432. Okay, so you can see it in the DNS name. Okay, let's set that up. Okay, there we go. So that's fine. So I want users to connect to my website with this in this way, and I also want them to connect to it via www, and it automatically adds a dot for you. AWS is quite intelligent in this case, and then my domain name.com. Now you can set an alias. Endpoint is going to be application, load balancer. Region, US East 2. Ohio, load balancer, the same one, and we've got them all set up. So it's exactly the same. The only difference is I set in my certificate to allow connections to these variants of my domain name. Okay, that's all done. Let's create the records. Okay. All right, it's going to take usually 60 seconds, so we can just refresh here. And what we can do is we can just go ahead and just wait. So I'm going to wait for about a minute or two just to let it propagate, and then we're going to test this out. All right. So I just waited a few minutes for it to propagate, and now we can actually test out our domain name. So remember, I allowed two variants, so let's check them out. So what I'm going to do actually is I'm just going to type them in here so you can see. Actually, no, let's not make it. Okay, this is going to work. So I'm going to say edensalt.com, and I had www.edensalt.com. Okay, so let's start with the first one. Add it in here. And there we go. So we're now connected to our EC2 instance via our load balancer at the following URL. We can see we have the lock, so we have HTTPS. So if we double click, we can now see we have HTTPS protocol. So if we were to try to connect to HTTP, it's going to automatically redirect and force connection on HTTPS. And that's what we did earlier on here when we configured our listeners. We forced all traffic to be redirected to port 443 for HTTPS. Okay, so there is the other variant. So www. Add that. And there we go. So we connected both ways, and our users will be able to connect to our website in both ways. Now you specify this in your certificate manager here, but like I said, I do explain this in my other videos, so I'll add the prerequisite videos, okay, in the description near the top, so you can go ahead and check how I do that. And then once you're comfortable with that, you can go ahead and follow along with this video tutorial, and then you'll be able to connect to your application. So your EC2 instance, you'll be able to connect to it via your load balancer where you configure your settings. Okay, so that's it, guys. Last thing I want to do is I just want to teach you how to clean this up. So it's good to know how to clean it up, because probably some of you are a bit lost as how to do it, and I don't want you guys to pay for anything, because when it comes to load balancers, you can pay. So let's close this. So first, let's delete our load balancer. So to clean it up, just say delete. Okay, it's deleted. Now you can go to your security groups. Now, security groups don't charge money, but I would advise you to anyway delete it just for safety. So I'm going to delete that. Okay, it does take some time. Yeah, it's going to take a while to do it. So what we can do then is we can just terminate our EC2 instance. We can just go ahead and click on this, and yeah, I can't remember this. I have to go to the new EC2 experience for this. There we go. Click on that. Instance state, and terminate the instance, and just confirm it. Okay, that's fine. So let's just double check to see it's not running. So yeah, it's shutting down. There we go. Okay, now go to target groups. Now these things don't charge money, not all of these. So target groups, we can take that out. So if it doesn't delete automatically, that's because the load balancer is still taking time. That's fine. Now security groups, maybe it allows us now because it does take a while. There we go. So that's gone. Okay, you can decide if you want to delete the launch wizard one. If you want, for continuity, we can delete that. I would advise you to at least leave the default one there. AWS probably won't allow you to delete it, so just leave it as is. That's fine. So we've cleaned this up. Now the records. So what you can do, actually, let me set this up here. So all you want to do is you want to delete your A records. So the A records that have the value of dual stack. Okay. So this one here, Eden sort, this one here is a type A, and the value is dual stack. So that implies we used it for a load balancer. So we can click on that and just say delete record, and say delete. Great. Now we can go and click on the other A record, and it's www. and it says dual stack. So we can go ahead and select it and just say delete record, and delete that as well. Okay, so they are gone now. We've deleted both those records and cleaned everything up. So we can close that. Okay, head on back. And yeah, that's it. So the section cleanup and everything's set and ready to go. All right, guys. So that's it. So I hope it helped you and it made sense. All right, so that's it. That's how you would assign an SSL or TLS certificate to your application load balancer with your EC2 instances right behind it. All right, so that's it. Thank you so much for the support, and thank you again, guys.